The Swordfish drops through darkness at 8,000 feet, descending toward the Italian naval base at Taranto. The date is November 11th, 1940. The time is 2300 hours, inside the open cockpit. Lieutenant Commander Kenneth Williamson adjusts his dive angle, aiming toward the battleship Conte di Cavour, anchored in the Mar Grande harbor. The torpedo, an 18-inch Mark 12, weighing 1,610 pounds, hangs beneath his aircraft's fuselage. At 2,000 feet, searchlights snap on across the harbor. Anti-aircraft fire erupts, tracer rounds arcing upward in streams. Williamson ignores the display, concentrating on his approach. The Swordfish, a fabric-covered biplane with a maximum speed of 138 miles per hour, represents technology already obsolescent, but tonight it carries a weapon that will revolutionize naval warfare. At 500 feet, Williamson releases the torpedo. The weapon drops cleanly, enters the water with a splash visible even at night, and begins its run toward Conte di Cavour. Williamson banks hard left, climbing to escape the flak envelope. Behind him, the torpedo tracks true. At 2303 hours, it strikes Conte di Cavour's portside below the waterline. The explosion tears a hole 27 feet wide. Water floods the battleship's compartments. The ship begins settling by the bow. This strike, one of 11 successful torpedo hits delivered during a two-wave attack lasting approximately 1 hour, represents the first time in history that carrier-based aircraft cripple a major naval force at anchor. The Battle of Taranto proves that battleships, the measure of naval power for 4 centuries, can be destroyed by aircraft costing a fraction of their value. The lesson will be studied intensively by one particular foreign navy, Imperial Japan, to understand how the British Royal Navy developed the tactics that would forever change naval warfare. You must return to June 1940. Italy enters World War II on Germany's side. The Italian Regia Marina operates a powerful battle fleet including 6 battleships, 19 cruisers, and over 60 destroyers. This fleet, based primarily at Taranto in southern Italy, threatens British convoys in the Mediterranean. The British Mediterranean Fleet, based at Alexandria, Egypt, faces a strategic problem. The Italian fleet rarely sorties, remaining protected in harbor. When Italian ships do emerge, they refuse decisive engagement, retiring to port after brief skirmishes. The British cannot bring the Italians to battle, but convoys must continue through the Mediterranean to supply Malta and British forces in North Africa. The Italian fleet's existence, even without engaging, constrains British operations. Admiral Andrew Cunningham, commanding the Mediterranean Fleet, seeks solutions. His staff includes Rear Admiral Lumley Lister, commanding the carrier HMS Illustrious. Lister proposes a daring plan: attack the Italian fleet in harbor using carrier-based torpedo bombers. The concept draws on theoretical work dating to 1935, when Captain Arthur Lumley Street, George Lister, then a commander, first developed plans for attacking an enemy fleet at anchor using aircraft. The tactical problem proves substantial. Taranto harbor features excellent defensive characteristics. The Mar Grande, outer harbor, provides deep water anchorage for capital ships. The Mar Piccolo, inner harbor, accommodates smaller vessels and provides additional protection. Anti-aircraft defenses include approximately 100 heavy guns, over 200 light automatic weapons, and searchlight batteries. Barrage balloons, moored to prevent low-level attacks, float above the harbor. Torpedo nets, underwater barriers protecting ships from torpedo attack, stretch across key anchorages, but reconnaissance reveals weaknesses. The torpedo nets prove incomplete. Some battleships lack net protection entirely. Others have nets protecting only portions of their hulls. The gaps exist because Italy prioritizes nets for protection against submarine attack. The possibility of aerial torpedo attack from obsolescent biplanes receives less consideration. Planning begins in September 1940. The operation, designated Operation Judgment, requires meticulous preparation. Illustrious, the fleet's only operational carrier in the Mediterranean, carries approximately 24 Fairey Swordfish torpedo bombers. The Swordfish, a biplane first flown in 1934, represents outdated technology even in 1940. Maximum speed, 138 miles per hour. Cruise speed, 90 miles per hour. Range with torpedo, 546 miles. Service ceiling, 10,700 feet. Armament, 1 fixed forward, firing .303 Vickers machine gun, 1 flexible .303 Lewis gun in rear cockpit. 1 torpedo or bombs. These specifications suggest an aircraft incapable of attacking a heavily defended target. But the Swordfish possesses advantages not apparent from statistics. The fabric-covered construction makes it remarkably damage-tolerant. Bullets and shrapnel pass through fabric, causing minimal structural damage. The low speed and excellent low-speed handling enable precise torpedo drops at altitudes and speeds impossible for faster aircraft. The open cockpit, while uncomfortable, provides excellent visibility for night operations. The torpedo itself requires modification. The standard Mark 12 torpedo, designed for deep water use, requires dropping altitude of 200 feet and water depth of 100 feet minimum for successful run. Taranto's harbor depth varies from 30 to 60 feet in many areas. The torpedo, if dropped at standard parameters, will hit bottom before beginning its run. The solution involves modifying the torpedo with wooden fins, increasing drag, and causing nose-up attitude immediately after water entry. This modification, developed through extensive testing in September and October, permits successful drops in 40-foot depths, but the modification proves delicate. Each torpedo requires careful fitting. Damage to the wooden fins during handling or flight causes torpedo failure. The aircrew training proceeds intensively. Pilots practice low-level night flying, learning to judge altitude above water in darkness using minimal visual references. They rehearse torpedo drops repeatedly, perfecting the approach angle and release point. They study recognition silhouettes of Italian warships, memorizing profiles to enable identification in darkness or brief illumination. They plan escape routes, studying Taranto's geography to identify egress paths, minimizing exposure to anti-aircraft fire. The crews understand the risks, flying slow, obsolescent biplanes into heavily defended harbor at night, attacking at low altitude where any hit proves fatal, then escaping through concentrated fire, offers minimal survival probability if anything goes wrong. The planning emphasizes precision over bravery. Success depends on surprise, coordination, and exact execution. The strike date shifts multiple times. Initial planning targets, October 21st, Trafalgar Day, anniversary of Nelson's victory. But logistics delays prevent execution. The date moves to November 11th. The delay proves fortunate. Reconnaissance on November 10th reveals that 5 Italian battleships anchor in Mar Grande. Previous reconnaissance showed only 3. The additional targets increase potential impact substantially. The final plan divides the strike into 2 waves. First wave, 12 Swordfish launching from Illustrious at approximately 2000 hours. Second wave, 9 Swordfish launching approximately 1 hour later. The first wave includes 6 torpedo-armed aircraft, 4 carrying bombs, and 2 carrying bombs plus illumination flares. The second wave includes 5 torpedo aircraft and 4 with bombs. Total ordnance, 11 torpedoes, 42 bombs, 16 flares. The aircraft assignments reflect careful planning. Torpedo aircraft target battleships anchored in Mar Grande. Bomb-equipped aircraft target cruisers and destroyers in Mar Piccolo and oil storage facilities ashore. Flare aircraft illuminate targets for torpedo attackers. The coordination requires precise timing. Flares must illuminate targets without silhouetting attacking aircraft. Torpedo attacks must occur while defenders remain blinded by flares. Bombing attacks must exploit confusion created by torpedo strikes. November 11th arrives with favorable weather. The Mediterranean fleet conducts diversionary operations during the day, steaming within range of Taranto but maintaining distance, suggesting routine patrol rather than preparation for attack. At 1800 hours, Illustrious launches reconnaissance Swordfish. The aircraft observes Taranto harbor, confirming ship dispositions, and returns. The intelligence proves current. 5 battleships in Mar Grande, multiple cruisers and destroyers throughout the harbor. Balloon barrage deployed. Searchlights and anti-aircraft batteries manned. At 2000 hours, the first wave launches. 12 Swordfish lift from Illustrious's deck in sequence. Lieutenant Commander Kenneth Williamson leads the torpedo element. Lieutenant Commander Gerald Bailey leads the bomber element. The aircraft climb to 8,000 feet, form loose formation, and proceed toward Taranto 170 miles distant. The flight requires approximately 1 hour. The crews, exposed in open cockpits at altitude, endure cold despite heavy flight suits. Temperature at 8,000 feet measures approximately -5 degrees Celsius. Wind from slipstream creates severe wind chill, but visibility proves excellent. Clear sky permits celestial navigation. Moonlight, 3/4 phase, illuminates the sea surface, enabling visual confirmation of position. At 2250 hours, the first wave approaches Taranto from the northwest. The formation splits. Flare aircraft proceed to drop positions. Torpedo aircraft descend toward attack altitude. Bomber aircraft vector toward Mar Piccolo. At 2256 hours, the first flares ignite. Brilliant parachute suspended flares burning at approximately 1 million candle power. The harbor illuminates in stark white light. Anti-aircraft fire erupts immediately. The Italian gunners, alerted by the flares, fire blindly into the darkness above the illuminated area. Tracer rounds crisscross the sky. Heavy guns fire barrage patterns, but the guns lack radar direction. The gunners shoot at sound, at perceived movement, at imagination. Actual aircraft, arriving from unexpected directions at low altitude, initially avoid most fire. Williamson begins his attack run at 2258 hours. He descends from 2,000 feet, approaching Conte di Cavour from the west. Speed, 95 knots. Altitude, 200 feet. Descending to 50 feet for torpedo release. Range, 1,000 yards. Closing, the battleship looms ahead. Enormous and immobile, searchlights sweep the area but miss Williamson's aircraft. At 800 yards, anti-aircraft fire concentrates on Williamson's Swordfish. Tracer rounds pass through the fabric wings. A burst strikes the engine cowling. Williamson continues his run. At 300 yards, altitude 30 feet, speed 85 knots. Williamson releases the torpedo. The weapon drops cleanly. Williamson banks left, climbing away from the harbor. Behind him, the torpedo runs true. Impact occurs at 2303 hours. The explosion tears the 27-foot hole in Conte di Cavour's hull, the battleship, displacing 23,622 tons at standard load. Settles rapidly as flooding overwhelms damage control efforts. By midnight, Conte di Cavour rests on the harbor bottom. Decks awash, effectively destroyed though later partially salvaged. Williamson attempts to escape, but heavy anti-aircraft fire concentrates on his damaged aircraft. Multiple hits kill the engine. Williamson ditches in the harbor. He and his observer, Lieutenant Norman Scarlett, survive the ditching and Italian naval vessels rescue them. Both become prisoners of war. Surviving to war's end, the remaining torpedo aircraft press their attacks in sequence. Lieutenant Michael Torrens Smith attacks Littorio, the newest Italian battleship. At 2308 hours, his torpedo hits Littorio's starboard side, causing severe flooding. Lieutenant Neil Kemp attacks Littorio again at 2312 hours, hitting the port bow. A third torpedo, dropped by unknown pilot in the confusion, hits Littorio's starboard quarter. 3 torpedo hits cripple Littorio severely. The battleship settles by the bow but remains afloat. Damage control preventing complete sinking. Sub-Lieutenant Walter Sara attacks Vittorio Veneto at 2315 hours, but his torpedo misses. Running beneath the battleship without detonating, Sara's Swordfish receives heavy damage from anti-aircraft fire. Multiple hits perforate the wings and fuselage, but the fabric construction tolerates the damage. Sara flies the riddled aircraft back to Illustrious, landing successfully despite structural damage that would have destroyed a metal-skinned aircraft. Meanwhile, the bomber element attacks targets in Mar Piccolo. 4 Swordfish drop bombs on cruisers and destroyers. Results prove mixed. Several near misses cause minor damage. 1 direct hit damages a destroyer. The bombing, while less effective than torpedo attacks, adds confusion and divides Italian defensive attention. The first wave departs Taranto by 2330 hours. Of 12 aircraft, 11 return to Illustrious. Williamson's forced landing represents the only loss. The returning crews report successful attacks, but cannot confirm damage in the darkness and confusion. The second wave launches from Illustrious at 2100 hours, 1 hour after the first wave. 9 Swordfish depart. 1 returns immediately with mechanical problems. 8 continue toward Taranto. The second wave composition includes 5 torpedo aircraft and 3 bombers. Lieutenant Commander John Hale leads the second wave. The approach follows similar profile. Climb to 8,000 feet. Proceed to target, descend for attack. But the second wave faces different conditions. The Italian defenses, fully alerted by the first attack, fire continuously. Every gun in the harbor shoots at any perceived target. Searchlights sweep methodically. Barrage fire creates curtains of steel fragments across approach routes. at 00:15 hours. November 12th. The second wave attacks. Flares illuminate the harbor again. Anti-aircraft fire reaches even greater intensity than during the first attack. Italian gunners fire approximately 13,500 rounds during the two attacks combined. The quantity proves less important than trajectory. Most fire aims too high. The slow, low-flying swordfish pass beneath the barrage. Hail attacks Littorio at 00:20 hours. His torpedo strikes the battleship's starboard side, the fourth hit on this vessel. The explosion causes additional flooding. Littorio settles further but remains afloat, resting partially on the harbor bottom. Lieutenant Gerald Bailey attacks Caio Duilio at 00:23 hours. His torpedo strikes Caio Duilio's starboard side below the waterline. The explosion tears a massive hole. Flooding overwhelms the damage control efforts. Caio Duilio settles rapidly, coming to rest on the bottom with decks awash. Similar to Conte di Cavour, Lieutenant Frederick Torrens attacks Vittorio Veneto at 00:27 hours. His torpedo misses, striking a pier beyond the battleship. Lieutenant Edward Clifford attacks Andrea Doria at 00:30 hours. His torpedo runs properly, but Andrea Doria's torpedo net deflects it. The weapon explodes against the net without penetrating to the hull. The bomber element attacks oil storage facilities ashore. 3 swordfish drop bombs on storage tanks. Results prove minimal. 1 tank suffers minor damage. The bombing, while failing to cause substantial destruction, forces Italian resources toward firefighting and damage control. The second wave departs by 00:45 hours. All 8 aircraft return to Illustrious successfully. No losses occurred during the second wave. The combination of surprise during first wave and experience avoiding barrage fire during second wave enables all 8 aircraft to survive. Illustrious recovers all aircraft by 0200 hours. Of 21 swordfish launched across both waves, 20 return. 1 pilot and 1 observer become prisoners of war. No other personnel casualties occur. Against this minimal cost, the strike inflicts devastating damage on the Italian battle fleet. Post-strike reconnaissance, conducted November 12th, reveals the extent of damage. Conte di Cavour, sunk at moorings. Later partially salvaged but never returns to service. Caio Duilio, sunk at moorings. Later salvaged and eventually returns to limited service in 1943. Littorio, severely damaged by 3 torpedo hits, requires 5 months repair before returning to service. Additionally, a destroyer and seaplane base suffered damage from bombing. The strategic impact exceeds the tactical results. The Italian battle fleet loses 3 of 6 battleships immediately. The remaining 3 relocate to Naples, farther north, reducing their ability to interdict British convoys in the central Mediterranean. Italian naval strategy shifts from potential offensive action to defensive protection of convoy routes to North Africa. British convoy operations through the Mediterranean, while still dangerous, face reduced threat from Italian surface forces. The operational lessons prove more significant than the immediate results. The Taranto raid demonstrates that capital ships, even in defended harbors, remain vulnerable to air attack. The torpedo bomber, previously considered secondary weapon, proves capable of inflicting catastrophic damage. The carrier, previously considered support vessel, demonstrates ability to project decisive combat power beyond battleship gun range. These lessons receive intensive study worldwide. The Royal Navy analyzes the raid, identifying techniques for future operations. The United States Navy studies Taranto's lessons, though full implications require Pearl Harbor to become apparent. Most significantly, the Imperial Japanese Navy examines every detail. Japanese naval officers study the Taranto raid thoroughly. Commander Minoru Genda, a brilliant air tactician, recognizes the operational implications immediately. Genda notes that Taranto demonstrates feasibility of surprise carrier-based attack on fleet at anchor. He observes that torpedo modification permits shallow water operations. He studies the defensive preparations that failed to prevent attack. He identifies tactical techniques that succeeded. Genda applies these lessons to planning for potential operations against the United States Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The similarities prove striking. Both operations involve carrier-based torpedo bombers attacking battleships at anchor. Both require torpedo modification for shallow water. Both depend on surprise and precise execution. Both accept risk of substantial losses to achieve strategic objectives. The differences prove equally important. Taranto involves 21 aircraft from one carrier attacking at night. Pearl Harbor will involve 353 aircraft from 6 carriers attacking in daylight. Taranto achieves surprise through night operations and operational security. Pearl Harbor will achieve surprise through strategic deception and distance. Taranto's defenses include approximately 100 anti-aircraft guns. Pearl Harbor's defenses include over 400 guns, but suffer from peacetime readiness levels. Genda's planning, building on Taranto's example, produces the Pearl Harbor attack plan executed December 7, 1941. The similarities extend beyond general concept to specific tactics. Japanese torpedo bombers use modified Type 91 torpedoes with wooden fins identical in concept to British modifications. Japanese pilots practice low-level attacks against anchored targets. Japanese planning emphasizes surprise and first-wave concentration on capital ships. The Pearl Harbor attack achieves results exceeding Taranto proportionally, but following the same pattern. American battleships Arizona, Oklahoma, California, West Virginia, and Nevada suffer severe damage or sinking. 3 other battleships receive moderate damage. The Pacific Fleet's battle line, 8 battleships, becomes combat ineffective. Japanese losses, 29 aircraft, 5 midget submarines, 64 personnel killed. The operational parallels prove undeniable. Taranto demonstrates the concept. Pearl Harbor executes the concept at larger scale. Both operations permanently alter naval warfare. Both prove that battleships, the measure of naval power since the 17th century, can be destroyed or crippled by aircraft costing fractions of their value. Both accelerate the transition from battleship-centered to carrier-centered naval warfare. But Taranto's significance extends beyond inspiring Pearl Harbor. The raid demonstrates that British carrier aviation, while operating obsolescent aircraft, can execute complex operations successfully. The combination of careful planning, intensive training, technical innovation in torpedo modification, and brave execution produces results far exceeding resource investment. 21 obsolescent biplanes achieve what a battleship squadron could not. Decisively defeat a major portion of enemy battle fleet. The technological lessons prove instructive. The Swordfish, obsolescent by conventional metrics, possesses characteristics enabling success in this specific mission. Slow speed permits precise low-altitude torpedo drops. Fabric construction tolerates battle damage. Excellent low-speed handling enables night operations. Biplane configuration provides structural strength and stability. The aircraft, while inferior for air combat or high-speed bombing, proves ideal for precise low-altitude torpedo attack. The tactical innovations prove equally significant. Night attack, while increasing operational difficulty, achieves surprise and reduces defensive effectiveness. Coordinated attacks from multiple directions divide defensive fire. Flare illumination permits target identification while maintaining darkness over approach routes. Low-altitude attack passes beneath most anti-aircraft fire. Modified torpedoes enable operations in shallow water. Each innovation, individually modest, combines to create overwhelming tactical advantage. The human element deserves recognition. The crews, flying into heavily defended harbor in slow, obsolescent aircraft at night, demonstrate extraordinary courage and skill. Williamson, Torrance Smith, Kemp, Halle, Bailey, and others execute their attacks with precision despite intense fire and danger. Their training, dedication, and courage transform operational concept into tactical success. The Italian perspective reveals different lessons. The Regia Marina, despite possessing modern ships and defensive equipment, fails to prevent catastrophic losses. The failure reflects multiple factors: inadequate torpedo net deployment, peacetime readiness mentality, lack of appreciation for air threat, poor coordination between services. Italian naval leadership believed their harbor defensible. The belief proved wrong with devastating consequences. Post-attack analysis by Italian authorities identifies failures, but implements corrections too late to affect subsequent operations. Torpedo nets receive completion priority. Anti-aircraft defenses improve. Additional barrage balloons deploy. Night fighter patrols establish, but the damage inflicts permanent strategic impact. Italian naval strategy remains defensive through war's end. The broader strategic consequences develop over subsequent months. British convoy operations improve as Italian fleet threat diminishes. Malta receives supplies enabling continued resistance. North African operations received support previously impossible, with full Italian fleet operational. The Mediterranean balance shifts substantially in Britain's favor. The long-term consequences extend further. Aircraft carriers become recognized as capital ships rather than support vessels. Battleships, while remaining in service, transition toward shore bombardment and anti-aircraft protection roles rather than fleet actions. Naval aviation receives increased investment. Torpedo bomber development accelerates. The fundamental understanding of naval power shifts from gun-armed surface ships toward aircraft-armed carriers. Individual fates vary. Williamson survives imprisonment, returns to Britain at war's end, and continues naval service until retirement as commander in 1953. He rarely discusses Taranto publicly, but correspondence reveals pride in the operation's success and satisfaction with having proven the concept viable. He dies in 1979 at age 70. Conte di Cavour. The battleship Williamson torpedoed, remains partially salvaged but never returns to operational service. The ship, raised from the harbor bottom, sits incomplete at war's end. Italy scraps the hulk in 1947. Caio Duilio, similarly salvaged, returns to limited service in 1943 but accomplishes little before Italy's surrender. Littorio, most modern of the damaged battleships, returns to service after 5 months' repair but operates cautiously. The memory of Taranto limiting Italian willingness to risk capital ships. The Swordfish aircraft continue serving throughout the war despite their obsolescence. The type remains in production until 1944. Total production reaches 2,391 aircraft. Swordfish sink more enemy shipping than any other Allied aircraft type. The obsolescent biplane, scorned by some as archaic, proves remarkably effective in anti-submarine warfare, torpedo attack, and reconnaissance. The last operational Swordfish flight occurs June 1945. Several examples survive in museums today. Illustrious, the carrier launching the Taranto raid, serves throughout the war. The ship survives numerous attacks, including severe damage from German Stuka dive bombers in January 1941. Repairs return Illustrious to service repeatedly. The carrier participates in operations across the Mediterranean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific. Illustrious decommissions in 1954 and scraps in 1956. The Taranto battlefield remains. The harbor still functions as Italian naval base. The anchorages where battleships rested, now empty of warships, accommodate commercial vessels. The shoreline facilities, rebuilt after war damage, show no obvious signs of the 1940 battle. A monument, erected in 1970, commemorates the British attack and Italian defenders. The inscription notes that 21 aircraft altered naval history. Historical analysis continues evolving. Initial assessments focused on tactical execution and immediate results. Later analysis examined strategic implications and connection to Pearl Harbor. Current scholarship tends toward broader evaluation of Taranto as pivotal moment in naval warfare's technological transition. The raid demonstrates conclusively that aircraft can destroy battleships. This demonstration, once accomplished, cannot be reversed. Naval strategy worldwide adjusts accordingly. The counterfactual proves interesting. Without Taranto, would Pearl Harbor occur? Almost certainly yes, though perhaps with different tactics. Japanese planning predated Taranto, though Taranto's lessons refined the plan. But Taranto provided proof of concept, demonstrating that surprise carrier-based attack on anchored fleet could achieve decisive results. This proof encouraged Japanese planners who might otherwise have hesitated. The ethical questions surrounding surprise attack received different treatment in 1940 versus 1941. Taranto occurs between nations already at war. Britain and Italy fight openly. The surprise element involves tactical timing rather than strategic warning. Pearl Harbor, conversely, occurs before war declaration, raising questions about proper conduct. The tactical similarities obscure this strategic difference. The technological revolution initiated at Taranto continued throughout the war and beyond. Carriers replaced battleships as capital ships. Naval aviation expanded dramatically. Torpedo technology improved continuously. Anti-aircraft defenses evolved in response to air threat. The arms race between attack and defense, visible at Taranto, accelerated through subsequent years. The Battle of Taranto existed as single raid lasting approximately 1 hour, involving 21 aircraft, resulting in 3 battleships sunk or severely damaged at cost of 1 aircraft lost. These bare facts understate the significance. Taranto proved that centuries of battleship dominance had ended. The raid demonstrated that carrier aviation, even operating obsolescent equipment, could achieve decisive results. Most importantly, Taranto provided operational blueprints studied and implemented by Japanese planners developing Pearl Harbor attack. The three damaged Italian battleships represent visible legacy. Conte di Cavour and Caio Duilio never fully recover. Littorio returns but operates cautiously. The psychological impact exceeds physical damage. Italian naval strategy remains defensive, influenced by memory of how easily the British reached into defended harbor and crippled capital ships. The 20 swordfish that returned represent less visible legacy. These obsolescent biplanes, flying into concentrated anti-aircraft fire, executing precise attacks in darkness, surviving to return and land safely, demonstrated that proper training, careful planning, and technical innovation overcome technological obsolescence. The aircraft that shouldn't have succeeded accomplished what conventional wisdom considered impossible. Commander Williamson and his crew, shot down and captured, represent the human cost. Their sacrifice, trading freedom for mission success, typifies the dedication required for military operations. Williamson's willingness to press his attack despite damage, drop his torpedo accurately despite fire, then ditch and survive capture, demonstrates courage transcending tactical success. The Battle of Taranto changed naval warfare permanently. Capital ships, protected in harbor, proved vulnerable to air attack. Carriers demonstrated ability to project decisive power. Torpedo bombers validated as primary strike weapons. Night operations proved feasible with proper training. Technological innovation, particularly torpedo modification, enabled operations previously impossible. These lessons, learned in 1 hour over one harbor, shaped naval strategy for decades. The British proved battleships obsolete. The Japanese learned the lesson. The Americans, belatedly, understood the implications. The Italians suffered the consequences. All navies adjusted accordingly. The Battle of Taranto, fought by 21 obsolescent biplanes against 3 modern battleships, altered naval warfare more profoundly than any engagement since sailing ships transitioned to steam. Lieutenant Commander Kenneth Williamson released his torpedo at 2303 hours. November 11th, 1940. That moment, when 1,610 pounds of explosive entered the water, represented more than attack on single battleship. It represented transition from one era of naval warfare to another. The torpedo hit. The battleship sank. Naval warfare changed forever. Taranto proved the concept. Pearl Harbor confirmed it. Aircraft carriers replaced battleships. The lesson, expensive for Italy and later for the United States, reshaped naval strategy worldwide. 21 obsolescent biplanes changed history. The Italian battle fleet, crippled in harbor, never recovered operational effectiveness. The tactical success achieved strategic results far exceeding reasonable expectations. The blueprint created at Taranto guided Japanese planning for Pearl Harbor. The proof that carriers could destroy battleships accelerated the technological revolution already underway. The Battle of Taranto deserves remembering not merely as successful raid, but as pivotal moment when naval warfare's future revealed itself. The battleship era ended that night over Italian harbor. The carrier era began. The transition, visible to those who studied Taranto carefully, would reshape naval strategy through the 20th century and beyond. 1 hour, 21 aircraft, 3 battleships. The mathematics proved simple. The implications proved profound. Taranto changed everything.